Hello. So, up to here, we have read. Okay. So, after the grammar, we had lesson in writing. That day, M. Havel had new copies for us, written in a beautiful round hand, France, Alsace. Okay. So, after this period, they were they had writing section, lesson, and on that day, M. Havel distributed some new copies, and on the cover of the copy, what was written? France, Alsace. Means Alsace is the part of France. It is not the part of Prussia. Alsace is the part of France. So it is written here. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the classroom, hung from the road at the top of our desk. Okay. And he kept the new copies on the table in front of the students. And how were these looking? These were looking like flag, and they were connected like a rod. Okay, so it was so. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. And on that day there was pin drop silence, and no one was shouting in the class. So it was really very quiet. The only sound was the scratching of pens over the paper. Okay, once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid attention to them, not even the littlest ones who worked right on the tracing their face hooks as if that was French too. But also here, the narrator tells us that there was only the sound. It was the sound of a scratching of pen and a scratching of pens over the paper. Okay, but generally, what happens if an insect enters the classroom? Everyone is busy with that. Okay, so but today there was a pin drop silence. Okay, and as if they were French. On the roof, the pigeons scored very low, and I thought of to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? Okay, and on the classroom's roof, some pigeons were there, and they were cooing. They were cooing, and but what was the reaction of the narrator? It seems that Germans can also force pigeon to speak their language, to speak German, it seems. Okay. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Havel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little classroom. So M. Havel paid full attention in his class. Okay, he was in his chair, there was no any movement, and he wanted to fix everything in the mind of the student. Fancy for 40 years he had been there in the same place with his garden outside the window and class in front of him. Okay, it was really amazing. He had been working there for 40 years, and and there was garden outside the window. So it is up to here. Now I would like to just like that. Only the desk and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop-vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. Okay, nothing was changed. Only bench and desks were overused. Okay, and it became very smooth. And there were walnut trees in the garden, and there were hop-pine trees, and all these trees had grown taller. Okay, it had been shown by the teacher M. Havel. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above packing their trunks, for they must have must leave the country next day. Okay, and M. Havel's sisters was packing everything because next day they have to leave. Alsace, they have to go to German. Okay, but he had courage to hear every nation to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted Babe, Bibo, Bo. Okay, so he wanted to teach as much as he can, and there was after that period there were writing section, and babies in chorus, in all together they were chanting, they were pronouncing. These are the phonetics period, babi, babi, like this. So that they were learning phonetics. Okay, Dawn spectacles, down there at the back of the room. Old Hauser had put on his spectacles and holding his premier in both hands spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and he was so funny to hear him that all wanted to laugh and cry. Ah, how well I remember it, that last relation. And as I told you, on the back side, on the back seaters were the villagers, senior villagers, and Hauser, the retired mayor, was also there. He kept his aspects aspects on the book, and he learned, he spelled every letters. Okay, and he was crying, his voice was vibrating, his voice was trembling with emotion, and if someone sees him, it seems that he is an old mature man. However, he was crying. It makes funny situation there. Okay, so still now the narrator remembers that day, that last lesson. All at once the church clock struck 12, then the Angelus, okay, and after then there was the ringing of church bell. Okay, so the period was over, and as I told you, Prussian soldiers were parading in that area. They were marching, and they there was a sound of trumpets by Prussian soldiers. Okay, they were returning from drill, sounded under our windows, and they can easily hear the sounds of Prussian soldiers. Okay, M. Havli stood up very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. And M. Havel was very sad. He, he was very upset, and the narrator did not see him in such a position. My friend said but sometimes choked him. I could not go on. After then, he wanted to address the class. It was going on, but at the last time, his voice was choked. Okay, and he could not continue. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could. Okay, then he turned towards the blackboard and he wrote "Vive la France," means "Live long France." Live long France. Okay. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed, you may go. And at this, the last time, when he was going to leave the class, he, by gesture of his hand, he said, "The class is over." Okay. And this is the end of the lesson. So you should know this is important chapter, and you will certainly get questions from this chapter. I think you should go through it. You should read the lesson. I made everything clear to you. Okay, so you just practice on the question. Uh, so up to here, I would like to leave you. Okay, so I think it is up to here. Thank you to all of you.